Bonjour, welcome again, everyone. I want to take this time to welcome everyone in person, as well as we have quite a few folks online today. So if you have questions or if you can't hear something, please go ahead and put it in the chat online. We do have people monitoring that. I just want to take a couple of minutes. I won't take very long, but just enough for our next presenter to get a drink of water and everything. To just thank the committee and all the folks that go into planning these community events. So this time around, our MUD Family Preservation Group had Anda Young Center, Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, Division of Indian Works, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, the Minneapolis American Indian Center, American Indian Family and Children's Services, or AFACS, and then all of our wonderful panelists and presenters that have come, as well as the info tables that we have here tonight. So we're really excited for people to come and learn about kinship and resources, and we hope you ask questions. This is a safe and inviting space, and we want you to ask questions to us. That's why we're here. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, you can come on up, or however you want to do that. So let's welcome Elizabeth. Elizabeth Reinhardt is here from Ramsey County Kinship, and she has a presentation for us tonight.
Thank you very much. I can just kind of jump in. Okay. The one thing I did want to just point out, the statute regarding relative search and when kids are in placement recently changed over the last year or two. And for the good, it expanded the term relative, the definition, to actually include more people. It used to just be by blood, marriage, adoption, legal parent, guardian of siblings. And what the big part that changed was including an individual who the child or the parent says they have a significant relationship to. That was different than in the past. It had to be that the child identified they had a significant relationship. The difference now is the parent can say it's someone they have a significant relationship to. Where that comes into play is infants. Like if there was a baby, what could happen sometimes is mom might say, I have so-and-so that I consider him. They might not have been with that right away because there was no relationship with the baby. So that is a big piece of it. For ICWA families, that definition goes even more extended. Extended family member, so relative, but also extended family member. And that's listed up there too, defined by the law or custom of an Indian child's tribe, or in the absence of any law or custom of the tribe is a person who has reached the age of 18 and who is the Indian child's grandparent, aunt, uncle, brother, or sister, brother-in-law, or sister-in-law, niece or nephew, first or second cousin to that parent. So that's a good thing. That is a newer definition also, so they keep expanding it and trying to be able to reach out and include as many relatives as can. There's an informal and formal kinship search that happens. If a child is either been placed out of the home or they're looking at possibly placing, they will reach out to the kinship search unit to ask us to do an informal kinship search, and that is basically trying to connect with mom, dad, any relatives that we know of, and then reach out. The one thing I would like to say is if you ever have a family member or you think you may have a family member or kin that child protection is involved with and they may be in placement, you can always call. They cannot provide you with information, but if when our screeners go in and they look and see that a child is in placement, what they will do is give you the kinship worker's name, information, and that. They can't provide information about the case, those kind of pieces, but that is one of the ways they really can't even say to you, yes, there is an open child protection case, but what they can do is say, Let me give you the kinship search for information and maybe contact you. Then we will actually look up in our system, and if there is a child in placement, then we want to make sure we're including you and asking you for any other relatives or kin that you know of. We really try to find as many people by talking to the parents, the children, all of that, but, we're not always, historically have not been very trusted by family and community, and for good reasons, for how people have the trauma they've experienced in the past with working with county government. So a lot of times they may be very hesitant to give us that information, which is understandable. What we try to talk to parents about a lot is we really want to have your child with someone they know and you feel comfortable with, instead of with a stranger if they do have to be placed. I know I didn't go through all that exactly, but kind of basically the informal is like go to consultations if they're talking about possibly placing a child. We will actually go on our system at that point and see has there been a kinship search done in the past. The good part with Minnesota is even though I'm in Ramsey County, I could find out if Hennepin County had a child placed in the past and who are the relatives that they were contacted. So we use those to try and even keep children out of placement and out of family arrangement. So then the next slide. The formal kinship search process is a little different. That is when a decision has been made that for safety reason, child needs to be placed out of home. When that happens, and then they have to go to court to do an emergency protective care hearing for equal cases, that hearing has to happen within 72 hours. Because the tribe also needs to be notified, actually much sooner than that, they need to be notified within 24 hours. That is when we know about it, and they will again be asking the parent, looking through all cases, and then contacting the tribe to ask for any suggestion, recommendation, any relatives. If they worked with family in the past, what's worthwhile, what could we do to help the family and the relatives to form a circle of support for these kiddos before they actually have to go into formal placement. For the formal ones, there actually is in statute very detailed of, notifying all adults, relatives, the dads, even if dad is alleged, it does not matter. We don't care about his status. He needs to be included, and the kinship search as relative does need to be included also. In some cases, it's a little hard if it's a baby and, mom says this is who dad is. We then attempt to find him if he's not around, and then, go from there with trying to get him to establish paternity. But if he says to us, I believe this is my child, we want all his relatives included also. And then help to do the DNA testing in those cases. Part of this is just much about the whole process. We're engaging relatives, sending notification letters. So even though we call relatives, we also send a notification letter. After that point, that is in statute that relatives have a right to receive certain notifications. That may be on the next. But one of the things I do like to explain to family members, even if the child's placed with a relative, like if the case comes in, child's already with grandma. But then we get involved and child gets placed by the court and it's a formal placement, we then still are required to try and locate and contact all relatives. And we want to do that because grandma probably needs some support. I mean, even if she's been taking care of them and kids need, the more family they can have around them and that mom and dad can have supporting them, better off everyone is going to be, and hopefully the quicker that we can get that child back. So this is what I was talking about a little bit, the relative notice requirements. So in the letters that we actually send out, it is very specific of what things we need to be notifying. family members of. One is the need for a foster home. That you have the option to become a placement resource for the child. One of the things I want to make sure is you have a right to say that you are interested in caring for that child and being a placement option. We include our relatives, whether criminal history, child protection history, they're in prison right now, partly because, relatives are the ones that can give us more people, like, we want to get as many people surrounding child and the parent as possible to help them to get the supports that they need. So even if a relative says they're interested in being a placement option, we still have to, follow all the licensing standards and the state, laws and the visas. We will do though, I'll relative call me and I'll say, "You okay with me doing an initial background check?" And while I'm on the phone with them, I will do one and say, "Yep, no, this shouldn't be an issue. Yep, you may have this, but it's 20 years ago." So it helps to put people at ease sometimes to know. Lots of people have lots of history, for different reasons. Basically, there's certain things the state will say, you can't place a child with that relative, but we want to try and help you also know that, before you even start the process, so this. Relatives that are not able to be that placement for one reason or another, you do have a right though, to also be participating in the planning for that child. Part of that is, and this is something that has been in the statute, but it hasn't quite been, sorry. Hasn't. I don't know, I don't think it says well known. Relatives have a right to say they want to be a part of the court hearings and to be heard by the court. How we do that in Ramsey County is in the letters that we send, or when we're talking to relatives. We provide them with court case number and the court clerk's number. For whatever reason, the way the statute is set up, we can't call the court and say this relative wants to be notified. So we will give that information to the family and say, this is the number you need to call, here's the case number, ask them to be notified of the court hearings. In Ramsey County right now, all of our hearings are still on Zoom. Well, most, if there's a trial or there's some exceptions, but for the most part they are. I do know other counties for some of those emergency hearings are in person. But what that does is they'll send you, the court would actually send the notification that has the Zoom link. So you would be able to log on. I think the biggest change, at least in our county, from what I've seen, is the judges are actually allowing relatives to speak. They will say who's on court hearing because they can see on Zoom. And then family members are actually able to say what they would like to say. There are some hearings where that wouldn't happen, but it's just more because for that particular hearing, there isn't really a reason for it. The other part is, regardless of whether you were to respond to that initial, so we do an initial kinship search when kids are first placed. If a relative, for whatever reason, does not respond to that initial kinship search, if somehow a child remains in placement and we are needing to look for a permanency option for that child, the fact that a relative did not respond or initially could not be a placement does not prevent them from being looked at as a possible permanency option. So that is one of the things too, I don't think is generally known. The next, I think, is about other supports that families. Yeah, relative engagement. So this is basically like for relatives that respond to the notice, have the opportunity to participate in the care and planning for the child. So that means a number of things. I am just gonna kind of scroll down a quick, I won't read all of them, but participating in case planning for the child and the child's parent. The one piece I would like to say about that. If mom says, I do not want anybody to know my business. So then she does have that right of the piece of they wouldn't have you involved in like case planning and, what does she, so we'd be able to say like, I think she needs, mental health treatment or some other kind of services, relatives, we want to hear that, because mom and dad and everybody else better. But the parent does have a right to say, I do not want them involved in that meeting where we're talking about like, these are the specifics of what happened in that. And that's just because of privacy. I mean, people still have privacy rights in this. But some of the other things it is helpful to know the strengths of the child and their parents. The other is saying you're interested in being a placement option. One of the big things is helping to supervise visits or providing care for the child. So even if someone has a history that prevents them from being licensed, doesn't necessarily mean they're not able to have visits, or to help in transporting, a child if they want to go to a family outing and supervising that. What it basically does is making sure there's not a safety issue. So one of the pieces, we want family members involved, especially kids used to go to aunties, on the weekends to summer. We want those relationships to continue. And the next thing, I think I only have a couple more slides. One thing I did want to talk a little bit about, it's specific to Ramsey County, but not totally. So Ramsey County received a grant from Department of Children, Youth and Family Services that enabled us to actually enhance and increase our kinship support services in Ramsey County. So we were able to go from 2 kinship search workers to a staff of 6. Part of why I want to bring that up, besides the fact that it has really helped us with families in Ramsey County and to get those supports to relatives right away. There are a number of community agencies that also received that grant and are using those funds for other families in other counties and other areas. I do believe there might be someone from a different spot in the panel that could go into more in that detail. Otherwise, I could definitely get people. There's a resource hub that lists all the agencies that received that grant and all the services that they provide. So the next was just the different things we've been able to do. So in our unit now, we have 2 kinship search workers, 2 kinship support workers, and 2 licensing workers. The support workers, when they get a referral, they're calling that relative or kin within 24 hours and saying, what do you need right now? So we've been able to, with the grant, use those funds to bring out gift certificates, take them to cover wherever and get groceries. Part of the thing that they've realized with some of these programs is, relatives didn't plan to all of a sudden get a call from us saying, we have your 3 grandbabies right now, would you be able to take them? And then they're being dropped off. Without the supports, without that. So part of this is, and other counties are doing this, other agencies are doing this, but actually providing that needed support, helping with some of the things we've been able to do. Someone and I were just talking earlier tonight, one of the things we were able to support these kiddos that we've been trying to get with relatives for a long time. Who all the relatives are, but they just didn't have the space. We were able to use those funds for them to actually build an extra room onto their place so that they could take all the kids and keep them together. So the more supports of these grants that we have, the better off family members are going to be. I think only one more. So the kinship licensing worker, the difference between that is, so for traditional licensing, they basically get every case. So whether it's, someone who's calling in and just saying, I want to apply to be a licensor, which is wonderful. We always need that. Or if it's a family member who a child's been placed with. for our unit, we only work with the relatives and kin who have children placed with them. The goal is to try and reduce some of those barriers. We can go to the next slide, they just realized I went to the goals. It's basically to try and help, keep as much normalcy for those kids when they're removed. Because all of a sudden they don't have their clothes, they don't have, so some of it is, just going out and going back to the house to get that stuff. If mom doesn't have transportation to be able to bring them their clothes or their comfort items. For the licensing part of it, it's truly to try and also help family members get licensed sooner. Because the sooner we can get you all licensed, the sooner somebody's not needing to come out once a week. When you have all these other people in your life at the time. So. I believe that maybe it's a super brief overview of, just the resources and the process of child protection and kinship and some of the added supports for relatives, so.
So I'm gonna just take the mic for a minute, and you can sit back down. If someone has a question, you can use the panel mic, and just push the button.
Okay.
Because we'll use this mic for the room. If anyone has a question for Elizabeth, I'll wanna hand you the mic, because otherwise people online can't hear it. So does anyone have any questions about the kinship? Okay, coming to you, so give me a second.
Hi, so my question is, I have a cousin right now who is terminally ill. And she has a little boy. She asked me to take him. She's kind of talking about what she wants as far as, because her and the father are not on good terms. So I want to know that, the father's not native. And I wanna know, how I deal with that, because she's talking about she doesn't want him around her son because he's drinking, and, the reason why they're not getting along well is because of the domestic violence stuff. And so who do I talk to about, that little boy's rights?
So part of it would be depending on what's working.
Get closer.
Yep. So part of it would be depending on, is there a child protection issue? I don't know what county, mom, it would be whatever
It's
county.
Ramsey County.
Okay,
I don't think there's a child protection case right now. And when should we start?
so if what you could do is call our screeners, like our screeners know what meets the criteria, you know what I mean, at what point does it rise to that level? So my suggestion would be to call them, or mom call them and say, these are all my concerns. If the child was around when that domestic violence was happening, or they hurt in any way, those are some of the questions that they would ask. If it doesn't meet the criteria for child protection, there are some community agencies that can help. I know, Lutheran Social Services has some great programs. There's some that I was gonna say that Laura has that are wonderful programs.
There's lots of folks here. Does anybody else have some suggestions or wanna jump in at all? Cause we certainly don't have to put it all on Elizabeth, cause I think there's a few different answers here. Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, which isn't in St. Paul, but is here in Minneapolis, as far as I know, can serve Ramsey County too, right? For kinship. So I'm looking over here because these ladies are in this row, so if you get a chance, maybe chat with one of them. They have some resources for grandparents and relatives. I know of other folks that have sought custody prior to something happening to an ill relative. So that's a way that you can go. There's some folks here in the room that do would know a little bit more than that with family court. But I'm just looking, does somebody wanna jump in on the question at all?
I could add, I believe William Mitchell either has or just had a legal clinic coming up for relatives. I would have to look at the date again to make sure it hasn't happened, but they do, oh, if there's
Do we
something.
know?
We have a clinic coming up on Friday, but the registration is closed for that one. We have another one coming up in November. Where we will do a consultation with relatives and families to discuss what their potential options are. But since there's not a child protection matter, it does sound like it might be best served in a family court situation. But we do have some people that we might be able to refer them to that could work with them.
Could we assist her with Ramsey Court getting, Ramsey County maybe getting the family court information? Looking around, I know there's somebody that will write it down. But we'll give you that too. So those are a couple options. And then their panel's gonna be talking about more, so something else might come up too as we're all talking. Yes, we've got one more comment.
Groundbreaking. But I was just gonna say, I'm with the Department of Human Services, Department of Children, Youth and Families, newly created. And Elizabeth, sorry, but if there's no open child protection case, no concerns about child protection, I personally wouldn't open that door. And kind of as Alicia said, and others start pursuing or exploring what might be legal options, custody options, planning options, as needed. And then I just also wanted to, note that there's support groups and other options out there to just connect with others that are going through something so heavy and have navigated this too, and just to have some peer support. So I'm happy to take contact information, kind of compile and then send that out to you so that you have everything listed in one place, if that's helpful.
Okay, one more person, no worries, we want information for families.
Okay, that's louder than I thought. My thought would be to, I guess I don't know how you know this person, like the dad, but just because he's drinking doesn't mean he would drink during parenting time either. So I wonder what that would look like, because there are resources for supervised visit agencies. If you felt comfortable, had family, friends that were comfortable feeling that situation out, obviously if he's showing up and he's drinking, there could be concerns there to where it could lead down the path of child protection. But we hear a lot that parents have concerns for other parents that can be very valid. But I would just be curious, is that something that he's actually subjecting the child to where it would be unsafe? Just a thought I have, but.
Thank you. All right, just gonna look at my team here to see, is there anything else from the website, or sorry, from Zoom or anything that I need to? Everybody must be able to hear okay and we're good there. Do we need folks to sign in? Have people done that? Okay, so I think we're all good online. We always make sure people do that because we want to be able to give gift cards both in person or online. Sometimes we have folks join us from way up north and stuff, so. We have all of our panelists seated here, so I'm actually going to have them first just introduce themselves and what their role is. And poor Elizabeth, I'm sorry, she's not gonna get to eat tonight. But we'll go ahead and get started. I'll pass the mic to you, and then if you guys can just use the ones in front of you or pass it along.
My name's Dana Hageman. I'm a child protection investigator for Hennepin County. I work in 2 of the ICWA assessment units that we have. I've been at Hennepin County for 8 years and 10 years doing CP in another county.
Alyssa Reiner again. I guess they really didn't say much, but Ramsey County, I've been there for a very long time. before I became the kinship supervisor, I was actually a kinship search worker for over 15 years.
I'll just use this one. I'm Nikki Newman and I'm a manager at Ramsey County in the child protection unit that covers ICWA as well. Been with Ramsey County about 20+ years, doing random things, including mostly child protection. You can do it.
My name is Sarah Carlson, and I am with the Minnesota Indians Resource Center as a ICWA Kinship advocate. Worked in ICWA for a few years now. I was once the Red Lake ICWA advocate, and I'm provided foster care for the last 5 years as well.
Hi, I'm Jackie Henry and I participate in the program, the kinship program. But I do take care of 2 granddaughters right now, and I don't know, it's scary. I mean, I was really scared of the girls going into child protection and getting into foster homes. That's why I just stepped in and said, I'll take up. So my daughter had to sign the double papers. So I have temporary custody of them right now. But I can't even remember how many years. I think it's been 4 years. Maybe 5. Right.
Puedo say nothing good way, it's a technology that can be and then do them. I am the resource coordinator for the Division of Indian Works for the Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, and I am an enrolled band member from Kiona. I'm Shane Takwati, in Sarah Brewing. I'm the business and I'm the executive director of the Family Indian Insurance Services. For a foster care licensee, that license is on the state.
Thank you. So we're gonna get started with some questions for our panel. You don't all have to answer. We'll just kind of go down the line. If you feel like you can answer that question, just kind of alert me, or just go ahead and set it on the mic. Our first question today is about the pre-court process and how can relatives support their family during the investigation or assessment phase?
So I'd be happy to talk about that. A lot of focus nowadays is really preventing out-of-home placement and even preventing the family from receiving ongoing services or getting involved for months and months at a time through the child protection experience. So as investigators or assessment workers, the people who work with the families first will often utilize family members to develop safety plan to eliminate that need for ongoing services or eliminate the need for children going to foster care altogether. There's a couple ways to utilize that. One's a very informal process where, let's say I get a report, go into the home, ask mom, what supports do you have? Where's the family members that are supportive to you? And we will then meet with those family members. Or I will just come back, not even meet with, not even meet formally with the parents, have the other relatives come and meet with me and the clients, and we will develop a safety plan, oftentimes strong enough to eliminate the need for even escalating the case to ongoing. Another way to utilize relatives is the family group decision-making conference, also called critical family response meetings, where it's more formal meeting where clients will utilize supports, community resources that they're aware of. If they have a probation officer, any relative, any, tribes or tribal representatives that they want there. And we will arrange that as a child protection worker, assessment worker, you step back and allow the family to develop a safety plan around the specific allegations that came in. A lot of emphasis is going in on preventing valuable placements and utilizing families, because families know our clients better than us, right? So it's a huge effort, not only through Hennepin, but I know other counties as well, to utilize the resources that our clients have, often including relatives.
I have to hold down the button long enough. I was trying to do it too fast. Anyone else on the panel have any thing that you would like to say regarding that question? The second part of that question is just what services are available to families? So I know maybe there's some folks on the panel that would talk about what kind of services are available.
We spoke to a lot of it. We went into the family group decision making and the things that we do as part of preventative. I guess I'm just thinking about sometimes how families aren't aware of the level of concerns or safety that there is in the home. And so I'm just thinking, as you were talking to Dana, about how if you know your family is struggling, intervening early and knowing about our involvement when it happens, because that's sometimes where we miss in that first 72 hours is not knowing. And families, some of our parents are embarrassed, ashamed, and all of those things, and don't want their family members to know. But for the sake of the children, we want them with family before they're with strangers. And so maybe just having your finger on the pulse of what might be happening in families and being available and kind of coming in and asking questions and asking if they need help and supporting. Take your kids for periods of time if there's things going on with the family system.
Okay, our next question is, what kind of foster care placements are available? So kind of a secondary thing for that is, what are the differences between informal versus formal kinship placements? So those are things like DOPAs, voluntary placement agreements. We'll just maybe if we can start on that end and come down, if whoever might want to start answering one of those questions. Does anyone from down there want to answer what type of foster care placements are available for folks?
We can talk about with APACs, and doing more of the normal foster care. Like I said, we're a foster care licensing agency. So that is primarily what we see. We don't really see the informal agreements versus the formal, because by the time we get involved, like things are already moving. And I think we have a part lower that's gonna be talking more about the foster care process and how that works and how we see it at these tax.
Sounds good. Maybe some of our folks that are here from counties can talk a little bit about designation of parental authority, what that is, a DOPA or a voluntary placement.
Is that going to be me? I can do that. So as Dana was talking, we're going to, at the time that there is a need for support for a family, and we have to determine the level of severity. But at all points, we are trying to prevent a court involved out of home placement. So at the very lowest end is a family arrangement. Family arrangements might be really temporary. And there is no court involvement to that. It is a family group decision making that maybe suggests something needs to happen with a mom or dad, or other family caregiver that's caring for a child, and grandma, auntie, anyone will say, let me help. You know, child can come stay with me for a period of time while you do A, B, C, or D. And so that is just a family arrangement. That's just people saying, I'm gonna do this for you. You're my family or my friend, and I'm gonna do that. Some families can't do that without financial support. And so the family arrangement has no family support attached to it, meaning no foster care dollars. Typically not a whole lot of financial support at all, not just financial or foster care dollars, but maybe even additional things such as cub cards and different things just for temporary support. So then the next option would, well, and actually as a family, there's the DOPA too. Family arrangement is just helping someone out. A DOPA or a designation of parental authority is more of it's not a real formal legal document, but it is signed by a notary that gives someone else authority to make decisions for a child. So if a classic example for that might be that a mom is just really in and out of a child's life, but grandma has been caring for, doesn't need financial support, but needs something that says, I have decision-making authority over enrolling a child in school, getting therapy set up, immunizations, low-level requirements for physical stuff. A DOPA wouldn't necessarily give you authority to make major medical decisions, but it can give you day-to-day decision-making power, which is good for about a year, and then you have to redo them. So with a DOPA, you can also go apply for financial support at your county for medical or for the MFIP or a child-only grant to support you on a minor level, because it's not a lot of money or support, but you can get medical insurance and things with the DOPA. You can go down and apply for support services. And so those options can sometimes be handled in child protection, actually close out and not really be involved in anything long-term. If a family member says, I can't do it without financial support, and we can determine that maybe a situation can resolve in 90 days or less, because there's a voluntary placement agreement. Those are only good for 90 days before they have to go into court. So it might be a short-term mom is wanting to get treatment, willing to do it. Grandma wants to care for the children, but she needs financial support in order to do that. We can put that child and go through the licensing process like AFAX and or the county to license that family member. And at that time, they're also getting foster care dollars to care for that child. If mom can resolve her issues, or dad, or whoever's the caregiver, we can return the child home and take the child out of placement, and there's no court involvement if that happens within 90 days. If it can't resolve in 90 days, then we have to do a court petition to have a formal placement and court authority to start working on case plan goals and things that are, well, we're always working a case plan, but a more formalized process. So VPAs and foster care licensing are court involved options when we can't resolve it in a lower level with family support. Usually parents are on board to do what they need to do and can resolve a matter in a shorter period of time. We haven't done that.
The mic is gonna be the bane of my existence, like, I just can't seem to quite get this. Anyways, I just wanted to add something, so as a family services director here at the Minneapolis American Indian Center, I saw some folks in the room earlier, I think they might have had to leave, but I've helped a lot of folks over the years with designation of parental authority or DOPAs. It is a really great way for a family, if you're just in a crisis or short term, It doesn't have to involve the child welfare system. It is more of a family arrangement. We have the forms here at the Indian Center. I'm sure many of our partnering agencies that are here tonight also have those forms. We also have notaries on staff here, so it makes it a little bit easier. You can kind of bring the parent and grandparent or parent and auntie or whoever it is in together, and we can do it all at once. So I think many of our community organizations have that. So if that's something you're interested or if you're wanting to talk about someone or just to see if it's an option, you can always call one of the agencies that are here tonight in the community. And like I said, most of us have those on hand for folks. So that's just a resource. Our next question is more about permanent kind of placements. And so if folks can talk about what resources are there, I guess actually maybe we should distinguish first between what is a termination of parental rights and what is a transfer of legal custody. And then the question is about how do the resources differ between those two options? So one would be a transfer of custody, and the other would be adoption. So I'll just pass that on to the panel if anyone would like to take that question.
Well, I can kind of give the basic piece of it, but anybody else can add in. So a termination of parental rights can either be voluntary or involuntary. So voluntary would mean that a parent gets to a point where, or even the legal custodian gets to the point where, for whatever reason, they do not feel that they are able to permanently care for the child. There are timelines in Minnesota, but usually those can be extended depending on the circumstances. If parents working towards getting their child back, but at some point it eventually gets to where a judge is saying there needs to be a decision. So that's the voluntary would be the parent saying, that I don't think I can do this, there are other times though where I'll be 100% upfront. It's that the county is going towards an involuntary termination and the parent feels like this would be the better option because they're gonna lose their rights anyways. The involuntary is different. For voluntary, they can have a contact treatment. And so and can also say to the person that like sign a consent to adopt to. So there's a whole lot more in just those pieces to it. Involuntary would be when the parent is saying, I think I've done everything that I need to get my child back. And I think they should be given back to me. And eventually a decision is made. Normally there's a trial where the parents get to, say what they feel they've done. County says what they think they've done, or why the parent shouldn't get the child back. And then a judge ultimately makes the decision of whether or not it's to involuntarily terminate the parent's right. Transfer custody is different in that the parent is saying, I want to transfer custody to this person. Whether it's a relative or there's sometimes if if she's a custodial parent and she is not able to care for kids right now, and dad isn't the custodial parent, sometimes they will do a transfer custody to the father. That actually should always be the first to look at, because the transfer custody to the other parent who's ever not the custodial parent, and then to a relative or son. The difference is in 2 years, the parent can go back into court and say, I feel I've changed, my circumstances have changed, I've done what I need to do, and they can request the court to get custody back. So those are kind of the major difference. For transfer custody, parents still have their rights, so they still have rights for the child. I'm sure I'm missing some of the pieces, but then it's sort of overall.
I will actually say a couple things to that. Legally, a termination of parental rights is what you have to prove is that they're unfit to parent. where a transfer of custody is what's in the child's best interest, and also with the termination, you have the opportunity to adopt. So that's also a difference, is in termination cases, people can adopt children, you can't adopt on a transfer of custody, you're just temporary, or you're giving custody over to somebody else, and then a parent can come back later if they're able to resolve the issues that resulted in the transfer of custody in the first place. So those are two the major differences. Also, I was gonna say with the involuntaries, that often happens because parents don't come to court, they don't show up and they're not present, and that's often how involuntaries happen.
I will definitely come out to you. I think we have a few attorneys and different folks in the audience here. So I wanna give opportunity for some other feedback as well. And so I will get to you. I just wanted to make one point, and that is that, as an agency that works with a lot of out-of-state tribes and tribes in general, in Minnesota, at least, I think we see a lot of transfers of legal custody, and that is because many of our tribal governments and child welfare departments have put in to their own tribal codes that they would prefer to have transfer of legal custodies happen for families. That is a more traditional way of doing things rather than a termination of parental rights. And so many times tribes will oppose a termination of parental rights, except under some egregious or special circumstances. So we definitely see lots more transfer of legal custodies, in Minnesota. So just wanted to add that. So I'm gonna go to our audience, and if you have a question, we'll run out, or comment that you'd like to add.
Thank you. Okay, a couple things. To go back real quickly to the DOPA, I just wanted to highlight that a DOPA can be for a term of a year, up to a year or less, and then it has to be renewed. The difference between a DOPA and a transfer of custody is that the parents always have the right to come back at any time during that year to rescind it. So if you have serious concerns from a safety perspective, you might want to consider something like a temporary custody situation, which it has a little more need, and you can go to the court for that. So that's something, again, you might want to talk to legal counsel about. Termination of parental rights versus transfer of custody. Of course, transfer of custody is always preferred because, and here's the really big thing that families need to consider. When your rights are terminated, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, there is a presumption in Minnesota and most states that you are what they call palpably unfit. You are unfit to parent children in the future. So if you have other children in the future, that could potentially subject you to at least child protection involvement. They may not necessarily automatically try to terminate your rights to that child, but they definitely have to come in and make sure that the previous circumstances don't still exist when this new child is born. So again, talking to counsel about what's in the best interest of your situation and what makes the most sense, especially if you think you want to have children in the future. That is a big one. And then I also want to highlight that involuntary terminations happen to families who are engaged all the time. So they can work a case plan, they can go all the way to trial and still lose their rights. If you think that that's the road that you're headed, you might be able to work out some type of a settlement with the county to do a transfer of custody versus a termination. But again, these are all going to be fact specific to your case. Also, with the transfer of custody, just want to highlight this as well. Yes, you can come back in a few years and ask for a modification, but again, you have to go back to the court and everybody has to be on board, including the county, the custodian that has custody, and the court system. So it's not impossible, but it's still something that you still have to kind of go back and show that the circumstances that brought you in, don't still exist. It's not just like an automatic. So these are like really, really detailed legal responses and you really want to seek counsel. You don't want to try to wing this on your own and you want to talk to a lawyer about that. So, and I think someone alluded to this earlier, that if you have a termination of parental rights, whether voluntary or involuntary, then you have a 20-year bar to receive a foster care license. So we have thoughts on that, but we won't get into those today. But that's just something to be aware of, because again, you could have your rights terminated and your life can be completely different tomorrow, but you have a 20-year bar for foster care licensing.
Anyone else have a comment while I'm out here?
I had a question for Nikki and also Laura and maybe others too, but Nikki, I think you were the one that kind of talked about DOPAs, and I have mixed feelings about DOPAs. I think they're great when they're great and not when they're not, right? So I wonder how you have conversations with families about when it is a good option. Where are the limitations? Like what kind of conversations pre-signing you might have with a family? What materials you have to provide to families to explain some of the nuances with DOPAs? Just kind of how you have those conversations.
Yeah, we've actually been getting a lot of talk about that with all of our, we're doing so much more work, as Dana was talking about, in preventing out of home placement. So we're doing everything we can, and so DOPAs are an option. I think what we've been learning where DOPAs become an option is when families honestly come to the table for their parents and say, we can handle this and we want to do this and we have the ability to protect and we have the ability to intervene, and they're going to listen to us, and we don't really want your deep end support and services, but we need some authority to be able to do this. So I think we don't have scripts to talk about it. I think when and you could probably speak to this more, because it happens a lot in the intake and investigation stage when things are in crisis and we're trying to come up with options. And there's a level of, we have to, safety, the true safety threat that we may have versus risk or, some child well-being needs. I think DOPA's really, you have to have people that are able and willing to protect if there is a true safety threat. And that's sometimes the difficult pieces around DOPAs. Can you talk about how you go about it as a manager? We support and direct, but I don't have those direct conversations as much.
Yeah, so where I see DOPAs coming into place more often than not is when the relative or the family has already developed essentially a safety plan, right? So parents are not caring for the children are with extended relatives, might be on the reservation, or we get a report saying relative who's the care provider, who's been caring for the kid oftentimes for many years, can't get this child enrolled in school now that the child is school age, or something medically comes up for the child and they go to the clinic and the clinic's like, we can't do anything for you because you don't have any rights to provide this care for the child. So that's when I've seen DOPAs come into place where I then go to the parents, say, hey, I know the care provider, your relative has been caring for this child for 5 years, however many years. There is now this need for them to have the ability to get them into school or get them medical needs or whatever. So that's where I see it, DOPAs playing a big part, at least in the subsequent intake role. Now there are other circumstances, but that's where I see the majority of DOPAs coming into place.
I think I would further say that, as you alluded, the parents have to be willing and on board too, because I think what was just mentioned here is DOPAs are not a good option if parents don't agree, because if there's a true safety threat, mom can come back after we're closed and pick up her kid and leave. She can take it off the table whenever she wants to. And so as we're assessing the validity of keeping a child safe on a DOPA, we have to know that the family can protect and say, I'm gonna, I've got this is my kid, she's gonna do what I tell her to do, and I'm gonna be, that's just an example. But if the mom is saying, I'm not signing that, it's just not a valid option, she's not willing to participate in that. So it has to be kind of a family decision to allow someone else to support and be able to make those decisions.
I think I would also just add, the families that we have come in, a lot of the times, it is maybe grandparents or a relative, and they have a very specific situation, so it might be, my daughter's going to treatment tomorrow, and, we've already worked out a plan, but we need a way that if I've gotta take this kiddo to the hospital, that and they come to us specifically at the Indian Center, or they might come to MIWRC, and no offense, but because they don't want to go to child protection. So this is one way to be, sometimes it's a stepping stone. So sometimes the family might not quite be ready to do a formal custody process. But maybe this is the first step. Because a lot of times, maybe grandma's already been doing a lot of the care, or auntie, or whoever, uncle, whoever it might be. And has been doing it without any financial help or anything, and they might say, well, I think I wanna do this right now, but I'm not quite ready to see if I'm gonna go to the courts and get full custody. We also work with lots of folks that might be moving back and forth between the reservation and the urban area, and so sometimes it can also be like, well, I am planning to seek custody, but I wanna go back home, and I'm gonna seek custody in tribal court. There's lots of different reasons, but we get lots of folks through the door, and most of the time it is because two people are in agreement and they're trying to figure out a situation where they want to make sure that the caregiver can provide for the needs of the child. But there are definitely times where we're also advising folks that it's better to seek counsel of an attorney. There's a lot of clinics, different things. We're also giving that information at the same time. But then there are people that we just know, they have a family relationship, they're just not ready to go change custody. And they have a DOPA, that's what they're ready to do.
I was just gonna say another example is parents who have to do some jail time. So that to not get involved in deep end child protection, that they can delegate a relative to care for their child while they're serving their time.
I just had a question about a DOPA. Sorry, I'm a little emotional. I had a DOPA in place for my nieces and my nephew. And it was put in place by a Hennepin County CPS worker. And then 3 months later, they came and took the kids from me because they weren't safe, or so they said, they weren't safe. When it was put in place, they said, no mom, no dad, they can't see the kids. I forbid them from being at my house, and it was my sister. I even forbid their grandmother from being in the house to keep them kids safe. And they still came and took them babies from me. And now they're adopted in non-native families.
That's a really tough circumstance.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can necessarily answer a question, but there's lots of folks here in the room, if you want to chat with someone afterwards. I certainly don't want to go too far into detail with their personal situation, but unfortunately, there are circumstances where different things can happen, and it's hard to know without getting more into the story.
And
Go ahead,
I
sorry.
will say, I apologize, I can't speak to that, but I'd be happy to listen to you and talk to you after this.
What do you do in the case if you have a person down here in the city and the caregiver is on the reservation?
So she was saying, what do you do if you have
The parent down here.
parent here in the metro area and the caregiver is on the reservation?
And where would the
You
child
can
be?
decide with the caregiver on the reservation.
Yeah, so a lot of times that's where the DOPA will come into place, right? So that's where I see a lot of times where the children, the caregiver is on the reservation, parents be down here for whatever reason, or over here, or wherever. That's a lot of times where the DOPA comes in handy, where mom's like, yeah, grandma, relative care providers caring for the child. That's what we established. I didn't know grandma couldn't get an enrollment for the child.
So if that has to get, notarized, how does that go about when the caregiver up north and parents down?
So it only needs to be notarized by the parent. And I oftentimes take a picture of it, text it to the provider, and that works just fine, and then mail off our company.
Next question is about, actually, I think what we want to talk about now is a little bit with NIWRC and talk about kinship support and kind of some of the things that you all do. So the first question is just, what kinship support can counties or tribes or nonprofits provide? And that can be in addition to just licensing. So what can people do?
Well, again, my name is Sarah Carlson, and I am with the Minnesota Indians Resource Center as a kinship worker. And my partner is Leah LaChapelle. She's been in the community for several years and has a lot of knowledge. And I kind of just want to say that like 90% of our client relatives are grandmas that are caring for their grandkids. So that's where Leah comes in, and she's good with all those elderly ladies. But what we do is we preserve for our kinship families, caregivers to stay with their grandkids, their nieces, their nephews. We provide resources, advocacy, and support. For the past year as a kinship care advocate, I've helped families with beds, helped grandmas go like meetings at school. We've taken them to their doctor's appointments, helped them get their prescriptions. We also provided some culturally specific supports, like ribbon skirt making, and we help get them to other places in the community, like sewing classes with Anita and Pamela Johns, star quilt making. About a month ago, we took all of our families and their kids to Como Zoo. Last winter, we helped our families get to DIW to pick up their Thanksgiving baskets. We've helped with getting Christmas gifts for the caregiver and the kids. We also supply foster care licensee compliancy items. We also have a monthly support group with Linda Eagle Speaker does come to our group. She provides that cultural spirit care, cultural elderly support care and prayer and cultural medicines, and we provide a lunch. Yeah, I've done a lot. Again, advocacy and support to preserve our families to be able to stay together. And yeah, we work off the 409 ICWA Kinship Grant, which allows us to give those resources to our families. I've helped a family with like a deposit because she had to move into a new apartment. We've also referred our families over to the American Indian Center, and when they had those funds available, they were able to help pay one of our clients' electricity bill. So again, anything to provide those families to stay together and be together with less, what's the word? We just, I forgot the word, but just making it stick and making it work. And then we do have one of our kinship, caregivers. She participates in everything. She's always with us and we're very proud to help her, provide her with those support and those resources and whatever else that we can help with, we're there to, so she can be a good caregiver to her kid.
As a with mentioned in Ramsey County, we have a kinship unit that's very specific to working hand in hand with relatives that we place children with. So they have a team of the licensing workers will write out and help with all the paperwork and have immediate financial support to provide for what's needed until foster care funds can be provided. Additionally, we have a lot of support services in our community with the Andayan Center and the American Indian Center. And so we partner with the community for additional supports for our families that we're working with.
Anything else regarding kinship services? Maybe I could just ask, Apex, do you also do some kinship or just working with relatives that might be licensed, getting licensed?
We're just gonna take a little step back here. Some of the other community support services that are tailored for specific families on the back end of the court is Division of Indian Work, Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. We have 3 different subsections to our program. Big hitter is the caregiver support group, which we help bi-monthly support groups at Division of Indian Works. To supplement that program, we also have tailored resource coordination and navigation within your county benefits. So I have somewhat of a background of county benefits, whether that be family MFIP or just general assistance, navigating Social Security benefits along with your working hours, so that you're not offsetting your own income. Really just uplifting and bridging those gaps between those goals. So you might be getting those basic necessities, but then what about on a day-to-day basis? How do you keep yourself whole and healthy and well? You got a lot of things going on, whether you be an elder, baby elder, a lot of them like to say, but or maybe you're raising, maybe it's a niece or nephew. So we aren't tribal specific. At DIW, we're not county specific. So those programs that you might be benefiting from a county and or other voluntary programs within county systems, whether that be child protection, caddy waivers, foster care benefits, we navigate those benefits to supplement the gaps. So like most programs, it's 65 up, we're 55 and up. We realize that more and more of our grandmothers are becoming younger and younger. Really what we're trying to do is bridge those gaps for the grandmothers to be, and the grandfathers to be healthy, whole, to get those children back to their parents. Is what the goal intended. But in the meantime, we have supplemental services to help out with that. Another big part of that is a lot of the education is going online. So we have another technology piece of that too. So we can bring in educators twice a month. We do field trips. And again, really hone in on that navigation, that certified navigation of benefits within the county and other program supports. Now that's to say, if you're in one program, can you be in another? Yes. From our program and how we run it and how we deliver that is it's a hand up, not a handout. So please, we are resourceful people, keep that intact and use all of those as a stepping stone to get you to where you need to be in your family. But I think there's something to say about when we all get tired in the room and those grandmas are left with those babies at night, they don't. And they're the one that keeps it together and holds those pieces together. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you to all the grandmas and grandpas that are raising those children and also being able to get a second chance. I know that oftentimes it's a give and take. So as much as we're learning from those children are giving back just as much love, warmth, care, and kindness, so. That's DAW's resources for the whole, but tailored services for grandparents raising grandchildren.
Thank you so much, and I didn't mean to skip over you. It's like a long way down to the end there. You were leaning back and I just looked right past, so I apologize and thanks for jumping in.
So going back to Kinship support, APEX, how we do things for our potential foster care providers is that people really, they come in and we have a staff designated for the onboarding licensing. So we see a lot of barriers when it comes to technology, people having access to technology or, you know, a device or Wi-Fi and just not knowing how to maybe navigate our online application. That was something that's like fairly new to our program. So having someone who's there who can meet people out in the community, she can meet people at their homes, or if they want to come in for office, making sure that she can meet them in our office, just to help them go through the application process. We do see a lot of grandparents too that come in and are getting licensed for their grandchildren, or we see a lot, and I know I had some conversations out in the rotunda of family members getting licensed because there's this threat of child welfare coming in. They'll say, hey, I think something's happening with my sister or my brother, and I want to be a placement option for my nieces and nephews. So we really treat, I think, kinship, whether that's relative placement or a traditional foster care placement, kind of in the same way, but just really walking with people through that process of getting their applications in, because it is, I think it's a lot of work. It's a lot more than what most people think it is, even with the trends and the amount of times you have to sign your name. It's kind of like, I just signed this other thing. So really working with people kind of hand in hand.
I want to thank you all from the service providers that are here. I know that you all help a lot of families. Does anyone have any questions in the room or online for our community service providers that do a lot of this work with kinship care?
I just had a question for you, Tara, in terms of licensing. If people are coming to you and end up having like disqualifications, where are you referring them for, or I guess, are you ever suggesting people appeal them, or there's some verbiage that I can't think of that my amazing lawyer colleague could help me with, but I'm just thinking of clients, yeah, exactly, variances and set asides, thank you. Do you also assist with that, or are you referring out for that support?
So it really depends on why they might have a disqualification. Honestly, for people that come, so we can do some variances, but for the bulk of people that come in that have a DQ, what we do is if they are tribally affiliated, we really encourage them to get licensed through their tribal nation. And we do that because we are an extension of DHS, and so we have to abide by those, the state guidelines, and the tribes have more freedom when it comes to licensing.
Hi, I know you're gonna really hate me for this, but I've got a quick question for Jackie. We heard from all the professionals on kinship and licensing and all that good stuff. I just wanted to hear from you, and was it hard for you to navigate through the system, get your grandchildren?
No, it was just, I hollered a beloved. No, I just got the DOPA side and now I'm scared because everybody said it lasts a year. And I'm like, wait a minute, did I say that out? But so then when the third child was born and he had to go through the foster care system. So then they looked to us and I believe I do have, custody of them. So it's a little different than the DOPA, I think. And, no, it wasn't hard at all. Because she came to see us at the house. And then she okayed it that the girls are there, that they seemed to be happy and everything. And then the court came and it was on Zoom. So I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to go nothing. So, but I think the only really kind of hard part is the financial thing. Because now the girls are getting older, teenage and preteen, and they like more expensive stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just, maybe we'll look at it, we'll see, so it's kind of, that part is kind of hard financially with them, but, I believe it was really easy. But I was just panicking there for a minute thinking about that DOPA thing. I'm like, okay, but yeah, then I remembered we did have to go through child protection and then go to court and then they closed the case. So after that, I think we have no worries, or I didn't. But yeah, it's still tough. I mean, they're girls. But yeah, I think they're happy and they're glad to be with their grandma.
A couple other questions that we have here. We're getting close to our time, so I might skip over a few. But we talked about this a little bit before, but if anyone has anything else to add about how can relatives be involved in the court process? Does anyone else want to add anything to that? I know Elizabeth touched on that earlier.
Caregivers are part of the court process where they get notices. The notices go to children and parents. So if a caregiver is caring for a child, they're going to receive notices from court and have the opportunity to show up if they want to. Other family members wouldn't necessarily get that information, but they're welcome in court if families shared that there's a court hearing, and if they want to attend, they're able to attend. Prior to COVID, you were able to, anyone could come into court and sit in the back and participate. Now it's all online, so you just have to have access to the Zoom links, but you can still participate and be there here and offer things that might be going well with the children.
There is one thing I just want to add for any relatives that do get those notices. Because I've had some call me to say, why does it say on here? The notices that are sent to the relatives are the same that are sent to the parents. Like saying this is when the hearing is, this is a Zoom link. So it actually says on there, if you do not attend, something could happen. So I've had relatives probably panic because I'm like, no, you don't need to attend. But then we found out in talking to the court clerk, they send out the same notice. So I just thought of that. I don't know. Some of you said maybe reminded that. So if there are any relatives or you're talking to relatives and they say, I got this and it says I have to go, relatives never have to attend the court hearing. So I just thought of that.
Thank you. One other thing I think I would maybe add to is, if you get one of those notices, you certainly reach out, even if you can't be a placement resource. It's always good if you can keep your updated contact information as a relative. They know that you might be willing to be part of a safety planning meeting or something like that. Also circumstances can change. You know, something could change for you or for the parent or for the children in 6 months, and so sometimes you'll get a second notice. And so it's always a good idea to just even check in with the person sending the notice to you. The other thing is sometimes if you would like to, the other folks that you can call when you're receiving those notices is, your family's tribe. So if you are a Native family, you're working, you know, and your tribe is gonna be also being notified at the same time. And so sometimes you can talk to your tribe, because if there is a possibility of a relative placement, it's always beneficial if you can let your tribe know that you want to be a placement as well, because they're kind of in real time, they're working with, say, for example, Dana in investigations, your tribal worker is talking to Dana and trying to figure out where is the best place for this child to be if they can't be with their parents. And so the more people you can say, hey, I'm out here and I'm grandma and I want to have my grandchild, that always helps, because somebody's gonna be talking to one another, so it gets the word around, and then we're able to hopefully figure out things faster and sometimes even before court happens, which is always the best thing for kids. Other questions or other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, if you are a relative and you know a family member that's working with child protection, I would really encourage you to call child protection screening and just say, this is my relative, I believe they're involved, here's my name and number, I want to be a help in any way possible. That's it, unless parents tell us the specific relative, we don't know about them. Another good way is if you don't, not comfortable calling child protection, which I totally get, call your tribe. Your tribe will contact. They know us, they get all the notices. If you're not comfortable calling child protection, call the tribe and the tribe will know how to get a hold of us.
Okay, some other questions that we have before we have to wrap up is just what are some of the common barriers to the process? We talked a little bit about criminal backgrounds. Would anybody like to talk a little bit more about that? What are some things that kind of get in the way of folks, relatives maybe getting licensed?
One of the biggest ones that we see is, the background, but also, not understanding the process for getting licensed. And there, like you said, there's a lot of work that goes into the application. And then the training, which is a lot of time. And I think that, a lot of folks think, okay, I'll be able to do the training and I can kind of knock them out. But they are hefty, and there's a lot of trainings, even financially. One of the trainings, the car seat training, and I always think of this too, if I'm gonna take in one of my nieces or nephews and the car seat training is $20 or something, $30. That might not feel like a lot right now, but if I'm taking in my teenager nephew, who I'm now getting in bed and a dresser and clothing and getting more food like that, $20 or $30 feels really heavy. And so financially, we see that as well. Even we've had one barrier that's come up a number of times lately is just being able to get a fire extinguisher. So thinking about, okay, which programs donate fire extinguishers, because there are things that, not everyone has a fire extinguisher. And, to be a foster provider, that is a requirement. So those are some of the barriers that we see.
Anyone else comments on barrier? You know that we heard from some folks in the room that have a legal clinic. Also, I think as a relative, you can always, especially if you are working alongside the parent, you know, if you're working together, and they know that you're willing to be a placement. They have an attorney, and so it's always worth them talking to their attorney to ask for resources, because there definitely are resources available for relatives. Either through the county or a social service agency or the tribe or some other entity, so. It's definitely worth asking because there's sometimes numerous places where you can figure some of those resources out. Other places where people might access legal help for relatives, anyone have any suggestions for that?
We work pretty closely with the, ombudsperson for American Community and Families, Jill Esch. She's just really helpful and we refer people to her quite a bit, whether that's, questions about ICWA or questions about, just anything that has to do with Canadian child welfare, because she works across the state of Minnesota. She's just been an incredible resource for us.
I second that.
We also refer lots of folks to the legal aid services that take place at DIW. You can access those services from a number of different organizations where you, if as a relative, you want to just seek some legal counsel and you're not quite sure. Either about custody or something to that effect. They provide some services and you can make appointments with them. And then somebody else had a comment on the audience here.
I was just gonna say that one other really big, huge barrier is daycare. Getting daycare when you take an emergency placement and you have a choice between caring for your relative and going to work. It's really a problem. And even with the grants that we have available in Minnesota, you know, the processing of that grant money and getting the daycare set up, people have a choice between losing their job or caring for a child, and it's a problem. So that's all this is.
So just to continue to speak to legal resources, obviously, I'm a person that's a part of the Institute to Transform Child Protection at Mitchell Hanlon. We do have some limited legal options for folks. I will say though, with the caveat that we do not do ICWA specific cases. So while we can be helpful to some extent, especially for relatives, when it starts to kind of get into the nitty gritty of ICWA, that's kind of where we have to refer out. Another organization I would say is great to be connected with is Ampersand Families. I'm not sure the extent to which they do ICWA work either, but that's an organization that we partner with pretty often, and that's who we have our limited legal advice clinics for relatives that we had talked about earlier. So that's just Ampersand Families, if anybody's writing it, a really good place to be connected with as well. And don't hesitate to reach out to the Institute. We might take a second to get back to you, but that's because we are being inundated with people who need legal help. So also, if you're thinking about going to law school, you could also do that and be a lawyer. We have a great Native American law and sovereignty program, just saying.
If I can jump in real quick, on the legal end, I like to encourage people to get their expungements done. That is one avenue that I think people don't think about. But as we're talking about court, like go and do your due diligence to go to your expungement clinics. That is gonna be your first best bet at getting it taken care of the quickest, especially if it's over that amount of time that the statute says that you have to wait in order to ask for that expungement. But it seems like the Minnesota State statute is making a lot of different changes to that. So prior to, think about your expungement, it can cost $0 to get that criminal background, sealed.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we actually have to wrap things up. You've all been a great audience, both here in the room and online, and I'm so thankful for you all for coming tonight. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight.